Hello, viewers. Welcome to FGA English class. I am Onome Uku. Today, we are looking at one of the types of writing, narrative writing. In our previous class, we discussed writing in general, talking about the purpose for writing to include persuasion, information, education, and all. But today, we're looking at a particular type of writing known as the narrative writing. Narrative writing. Narrative writing. What is narrative writing? Now, it is very pertinent to understand that writing is a way of expressing yourself using symbols or pen and paper or digitally, like typing words into the computer, and then through this you express your thoughts and emotions and your feelings. Okay, that's basically what writing is all about. Now we have four basic types of writing, like styles of writing. Now, the one we're treating today is narrative writing. The narrative writing. And most of us are familiar with narrative writings like your books, your novels, your short stories. Yeah, they are examples of narrative writings. Now, narrative writing basically expresses or tells a story. It tells a story presenting, characters who act out events that will occur in the narrative. Okay, it is actually a creative writing too. Creative writing in the sense that the writer, who is usually the author of the writing, uses plots, characters that are imagined by him or her. So he creates these characters himself, to act out the events that actually occur in narrative writing. So that's what basically narrative writing is all about. Okay, narrative writing is also written in a chronological order. Now, for those who actually studied literature, you understand that it is written in a cause effect relationship. The story, the story or the plot rather, is what written in a cause effect what relationship or causality relationship, where one incident leads to another incident, to another, to the end of the narrative. Now, the structure of a narrative is basically a beginning, which is usually the introduction, and then we have the middle. The middle is also known as the body, and then we have what the conclusion. Conclusion is the end of a narrative. Okay, so stories, plots are written from the beginning, where you have the introduction, where maybe the writer introduces his characters and the setting, that's the environment where the actions take place. Okay, so we have the introduction, and then we see events happening in the introduction, and these events in this introduction is what actually these events are what actually translate into the next what action, and then like that it follows chronologically to the end of the narrative. Okay, so let's see the features of a narrative. What does a narrative contain? What should be, or what should we know, those who want to actually write, who intend to write novels and short stories or any form of literature? Now, how do you know what to write or how to write a story and all that? Now, there are some basic elements that must be involved or that should be what part that should be part of what of the narrative. Okay, we call like some people call it elements of what of a narrative. Some call it features of what a narrative. Okay, okay. One of the features of a narrative is that it must have a plot. It must have a plot. Now this plot Now, this plot is like the foundation on which the story is, built. Okay, it is what the story is what built on. That's what the plot is. Okay, now it is actually written, or it is said to be what the events that happened or occur in a narrative. Now, from the beginning, the plot has a beginning, a middle, and what and an end. Okay, so if you were to write a plot about, say, a friend, for example, like you want to write a story or the history of your friend, or a biography rather of a friend, what you need to do, because that story will need a plot, it will need characters. We'll come to that later. Okay, now this plot is supposed to follow like a natural sequence. One thing happens to the next, and to others. Okay, but if you actually decide to now start from where the person dies, and then before he was born, and then before he now, it will not actually, follow a natural sequence. Okay, so that's what plot actually, helps us to what achieve. That's cause effect relationship. Okay, so that's what that's one of the main elements in narrative, the plot. Okay, so for you to have a good plot, you should be able to a good narrative. Then your plot has to be very very sound, very good. Okay, a typical plot should have conflict. Now, within the plots, you have characters, right? These characters are the ones that actually act out the incidents in the narrative, and then there should be a conflict that will actually, drive the plot, to the drive the storyline. Okay, to help the plot, to get to the story, the end of the story. Okay, plot is like what a framework for a narrative story to build on from the beginning through the middle and to the end. Okay, so another feature of a narrative is or let's see if we can have, okay, the functions now. Functions of a plot. So we said what functions of what a plot. A plot shows how one event leads to another. Okay, creating a sense of direction and purpose, like I just explained. Okay, then this this plot shows the cause effect what relationship, which is what makes a story very what engaging. It makes the story what engaging to the reader. Okay, because that's what we actually captivate. Captivate or capture the mind of the reader. It's like suspense. Make them want to read to know what happens next. All right. So that's for the functions of the plot. Okay. We're looking at what the elements of a plot. An element of plot. One important element of a plot is the conflict. And the conflict is a struggle between the two opposing forces in a narrative. Like, for better understanding, you have you could have like the boss. Like when you're watching a movie, you have the boss, and then you have the actor. Okay, so the actor and the boss are always in constant struggle. So there are the two opposing forces. Like there's always a clash between the boss and the actor. And then for students who love to watch cartoons a lot, like Blaze and the Monster Machines, you have Blaze as the actor, always trying to help people, and then you have Crusher, who is always, kicking against him and all that. Okay, so these are what this. Oh, sorry, this is the conflict we're referring to in the narrative. The author is supposed to create two characters with opposing forces or traits, in such a way that probably at the end the good will supersedes the evil, one, or the evil force. Okay, so that's conflict, and without conflict there won't be a narrative. It is the conflict that actually pushes the plot forward. Okay, all right, so that's one element of a narrative. Another element of a plot is the character. Oh, sorry, is conflict. Okay, that's what we just discussed now. Conflict. We've talked about plots. Now looking at what conflict, and we just explained conflict to an extent. But let me just give more explanation that you need two opposing characters or opposing forces in a narrative. One might believe in something else, and the other one believing in a contrary, thing. And so that's now, results to, clashes and disagreements, and these disagreements will now propel the story forward. Okay, so that's what conflict is all about. So we have plots and what conflict as elements in a narrative. Let's look at maybe the characteristics of conflicts. We said disagreement is one of the features of conflict. Like there must be a disagreement between two forces. It could be between one character and another character. Okay, then it will also be it could be a struggle between the character and the society at large. Then it could be a struggle between, say, one group and another group, so that's how it goes. And then it could even be a conflict, like a personal conflict within the individual, within the character, so that's one characteristics of conflict. And then we have incompatible goals. The goals of both sides are usually incompatible. Like they don't agree at all. There's always disagreements. One might want one thing and the other another. So that's what actually brings about the conflict in the first place. Okay, then we have communication issues. Communication issues usually breeds conflict, probably because of misunderstanding. It's possible that someone is speaking Hausa and the other one is speaking Igbo, and there is miscommunication, and then the conflict might arise from that particular miscommunication. Okay, all right, then self-interest. Everybody wants what they want. Nobody wants to actually accommodate the other one's either opinions or whatever, or goals. Just want what you want. So that too is another element of conflict. Okay, all right, so far we have had two basic elements of a narrative. Okay, and then a third one. Let's look at the third one, then we can copy what we have so far. Characterization. Okay, now characterization basically is the process, a process of giving life to imagined or characters, imagine people, sorry, giving life to imagine people. Now, the writer of a narrative is seen as a demigod in that respect, because he is the one that creates, his or her character. these characters that actually, interact in the narrative. So he gives them flesh and blood, as if they are human beings. Human beings that you can see, human beings that can talk, human beings that can think, human beings that can even dress, properly and everything. So they are not actually humans, but the writer is the one who creates them from his what imagination. That's why narratives are always viewed as creative writing. Okay, now this writer sits down, and then after writing the plot, he now sits down to start thinking of people that can actually reflect these different events and incidents that he has actually written in the plot. Okay, so these characters now created by the writer or the author, they are known as characters, imagined characters. Okay, they are known as what? Characters. So this character now, the process of creating them, that is what? Characterization. Or these people that are created by the writer, they are called characters, and they are the ones that are actually interacting, in narratives, talking in dialogues, in monologues, dressing up, doing things, so these ones are the characters. Okay, all right. So it is the writer who creates them. Okay, just like God created all of us. That's why we said they are also what? They are demigods. They're the ones who create them. So okay, I want to write, a narrative about the importance. I'll pass the message or the theme on the importance of education, for example. Now, if he's doing that, he's going to need some student characters. I know in a school you have, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So now, if he wants to drive home the point that education is important, then he needs a particular character to actually, reflect that word theme. So he would need a character, maybe a student who is very punctual in school, who is very intelligent, who respects, his teachers, so he will give that imagined characters those traits. Okay, and then on the other hand, for him to create conflict, he might decide to create what? A contrary what? Character. That is a bully, that is always coming late to school, and causing what? Nuisance. Alright? So that's just an example of how characters are being created by authors. Okay? So we have let's see. Then we have direct characterization. Two basic types of characterization. We have direct characterization and indirect characterization. For example, the direct characterization has to do with or involves the author being the author telling the audience or telling the reader what a character is like. Now, in this aspect, in this type of characterization, the author uses a telling method to tell us what a character is like. So the onus falls on him to tell us. For example, if he says Mary was cheerful, kind, and generous. Mary was cheerful, kind, and what? Generous. So he is the one telling the reader who Mary is or what Mary is like. Okay, so that's direct characterization. And then on the contrary, we have the indirect characterization, where the author shows the audience or the reader what a character is like through the character's action, dialogue, thoughts, and how others perceive them or how others react to them. Okay, so in this second one, this second type of characterization, he doesn't tell you who a character is, he prefers you. Okay, now in this case, maybe the in terms of speech now, under this indirect characterization. Now, if you said the woman's voice was low, threatening growl. The woman's voice was low, threatening growl. Okay? Threatening growl. Okay, now in this particular in this sentence, you realize that the author shows what? Intimidation. Shows intimidation without stating that the character is what? Threatening. Okay? The woman's the woman's voice was what? Voice was threatening growl. Okay? So from this statement, you don't need to be told that this person is trying to intimidate, probably a listener or the referent of his what statement. Okay, so that is the one of the indirect, ways of character or giving of characterization. Another one, is through their thoughts. Okay, now a character's what internal monologue can reveal their fears and desires. Now a character can just decide maybe he's unhappy about a particular incident, and then he's just standing and then he's trying to, we call it soliloquy, yeah, where he starts thinking and either he's talking to himself or he's just thinking aloud. All right, and then he might say, why did I trust this man? Why did I do this or do that? Questioning their actions. Okay, so in that case, you can actually tell the kind of person that character is based on what he reveals during that thought process. Okay, so that is another way of another direct characterization when it comes to thoughts of the characters. Okay, so another way, that's the third one, is through their actions. The writer will allow you to read and see the actions of different characters, and you will be the judge of their personality based on their actions. If you see a child who is a bully, is always fighting his classmates and all that, of course you know that that person is a bully, and so that's another way of showing characterization through action. Okay, and then finally, the fourth way is the character's effect on others. How do other people perceive this character? Generous? Is he intelligent? So that's one way of finding out. So what people say, what other characters say about a certain or the main character is a long way, for the reader to know who, or to gain, access to the character's personality. All right. So that is basically what characterization is all about. Okay. So today I'm going to stop here today, and then in our next class we're going to take on other elements of narrative. Okay. But before we go, I'm going to give you a short note, so that you can always make reference to what we have done today. So far, we have been discussing narrative writing. That narrative writing has to do with storytelling, basically, and then we've moved forward to look at some elements of a narrative writing, and we discuss one of them as the plot, and the plot is the chronological arrangement of the events that occur in a narrative, and they will have elements like conflict, which is the clash between the two opposing forces in the narrative. And then we went further to mention characterization as one of the elements of a plot, one of the elements of a narrative, which is the process of giving life, giving flesh and blood to imagined characters, imagined people who are imagined by the writer or the author of the narrative. So for your next class, we're going to be looking at other elements of a narrative. For your assignment, write a short story, any short story of your choice. And then in our next class, we're going to discuss their elements. Okay? All right. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in my next class. Please share our videos and like them too. Bye for now.